Hello there, I'm Jeanette Lane, a craft designer at CraftStash, and in today's video I'm sharing how to make this quick kinetic birthday card. Now if you're like me, you are behind on your birthday cards and you want to try to make them as quickly and as easily as possible, and I feel like this card is perfect for that. I'm going to be sharing a few techniques in this tutorial. The first is how to use nesting circle dies to create a card base. So I love circle dies, circle nesting dies. They're so versatile. And also I'm going to show you how to create this kinetic element. Super easy and super fun, as well as doing a little bit of heat embossing, but not with embossing ink. I'm going to be using an embossing pen. So not an embossing ink pad, but an embossing pen, which I haven't been able to put down since I got it. I'm obsessed. First things first, we're going to create our card base. So this is just a piece of blue cardstock, A4 size, and I've trimmed it down just so that it can fit through my platform, which is 6 inches wide. And so what I'm going to do is grab the largest die. You can use any circle die, of course, depending on how big you want your card. So any size will do. And then notice my fold is over here on the left. And when I die cut this, when I run this through my machine, I want to make sure that my die edge, my cutting edge, is past the fold. So let me flip this over so you can see what the other side looks like. So see there how the cutting edge is just beyond the fold. If you cut it like this, you're going to cut 2 circles. But if you just move it just a hair past the fold, then you will get a standing card base. So this is what our card base looks like now. As you can see, we get that nice fold, and it kind of rolls a little bit when it stands up on its own, which you can leave as is if you want. That's what I did here. But if you want to make sure that this stands up on its own, then you want to trim just a little bit off of the bottom so that you don't have any rolling cards, rogue rolling cards. So if you notice there, I just trimmed it just a hair off of the bottom so that my card doesn't roll around. And next I want to cut this layer here, this teal layer, and also the white where my stamping is going to be. So I have some teal cardstock and some white cardstock, and I'm just going to grab the next circle down for the teal, and then the third circle from the biggest. Gosh, how would you describe that? Sorry guys. So the next one in line, the next consecutive circle, and I'm going to die cut that from white. So now that I'm done die cutting all of my layers, I want to get to stamping, and I'm going to start off by stamping my card base. So I'm going to stamp this front, right, just like this. So I'm going to be using this stamp set, which is from Apple Blossom, and it's the Heartfelt Moments collection. It's the birthday stamp set. And I'm going to grab this candle and just create a repeating pattern in silver. And for my ink, I'm going to be using this Izink metal ink in silver. And so I'm going to mount my stamp on a stamp block. So there's my stamp on my stamp block, and I'm going to start stamping these candles all the way around in a circle. But what I'm going to do is just start at the bottom and then turn it 180 degrees and stamp it on the opposite side. So notice when I stamp, I'm not stamping, all the way to the center, because I do want to leave a gap for my happy birthday sentiment. So again, I'm going to stamp, I'm going to turn, rotate this on this side. I think of it as a clock. So there I'm stamping at 6 o'clock, and now I'm going to rotate it and stamp at 12 o'clock. And I'm just going to repeat the same thing. As I'm stamping, I'm positioning some of these candles higher than the others. Some are lower, some are taller, but I feel like it just adds character and movement to my card base. So I'm really happy with this. So there's my card base, and now it's time to stamp my sentiment down the center before moving on. And for my sentiment, I'm using the Apple Blossom Flowers collection, and I'm going to grab this birthday wishes stamp, and this one is different than the one on the original card, but that's okay. I changed my mind on the way to the studio. I'm like, I really want to use this stamp because I love the mix of the fonts on this one, because it's like just a basic font, and then also a scripty font. So I love that mixture of the two. And for my sentiment, I'm just using VersaFine ink in Onyx Black. All right, so I'm done with the card base. I can set that aside for now. And now I'm going to move on to stamping my birthday cake, which looks absolutely delicious. And I love the little starry candles on top. And I'm gonna grab my stamp block. And for the birthday cake, I'm gonna stamp this in Laguna Bay, and this is a Nuvo hybrid ink pad. So we're just going to load up our stamp with some ink, making sure we don't miss any of the surface, because then we'll be really sad about it. But the great thing about this project is you can always, if you mess up on one side, you can just flip that over and use the other side, which sometimes I have to do because my stamping isn't perfect. All right, so I'm just gonna stamp the cake right in the center. And now it's time to do a little bit of embossing with this embossing pen. And there's different brands that you can use. This is the Wow embossing pen. So it has a fine tip, it's pretty fine, and that has embossing ink. So I'm just gonna color in the stars with my pen. And you can add other details with this pen. I love it, it's great for in case you make any embossing mistakes, like you didn't stamp enough, have enough ink in some areas, embossing ink, then you can go back and touch it up with this pen. Or you can also write out and spell out names to personalize your cards. So it's really just a great tool to have. It's definitely one of those staples that you need. And so the great thing about this is I'm just gonna color these stars, but you can also color other portions of the cake. So I could do it down here and emboss that in a different color. But what I'm gonna do is just emboss it in yellow and stick to embossing the star candles. So for my embossing powder, I'm using this really bright yellow powder from Cosmic Shimmer, and this color is Bright Sunshine. It really is. It really is very bright and sunny. So I'm just gonna open that up. And before my ink dries, I want to be pretty quick about this. I'm just going to sprinkle that generously on top and tap off the excess. And I'm going to save all that excess embossing powder for another project. And in case you've never done embossing, it's actually, I mean, you might see this and be like, that's not enough for all of my projects that I want to do, but it really is, because you're always saving that excess and you just use a little bit at a time. So that's what it looks like right now. And now I'm going to grab my heat tool to melt the powder, and it's going to give it just like a raised and glossy texture. So here's what the embossing looks like up close, and you can always just color the stars in with a yellow marker, but I felt like the embossing powder just gives it a little bit of gloss and makes it extra special. And now that this is done, I can grab my circle, my teal circle that's just a tad bigger than the white circle. I'm going to glue that down. And for my glue, I'm using the Cosmic Shimmer Dries Clear Glue. I'm just gonna put a little bit all around, swirl it in the center, and then we're going to just add that right on top of our teal circle. All right, so here are my two pieces. Now I need to attach these to each other. So I'm gonna be doing that with a brad, and I'm gonna be using the Tim Holtz Ideology Countdown brads. So they have numbers on them. So you can just pick which number you need. There's 31 of them, so it's 1 through 31. And then you can grab the appropriate age. So let me see, this one is 25, perfect. So what I'm gonna do is you wanna make sure that you open this part, because if you attach the brad all the way through, you're going to seal all your card. So I'm just gonna be attaching this front piece to my card base, making sure that that this is loose back here. So make sure that you're not doing it all the way through, otherwise you're gonna have a closed card base. So then I'm going to grab, you can either use a tiny, if you have one of those tiny paper punches, but I'm gonna just use a pokey tool. So I'm holding my card together and I'm going to place my brad right here. So what I'm gonna do is just pierce this through. There it goes. See, it's just going through those two layers. So when I turn this, you can see it just went through those two layers. And now I can pull this out. So there is my brad. You can see it went through to the other side. And then I just opened up the little legs to secure it in place. kind of push down. And then when I flip it over, we get that fun kinetic element that just moves right out of the way to reveal our birthday wishes sentiment. And it stands up on its own, which is fantastic. And the last thing I wanted to do was just add some colored pearls for interest. So I'm going to be taking my glue again and just dotting some dots here and there randomly. So I'll do 3 on this side and 3 on this side. And I'm going to be adding some pink pearls, and this is Anita's pearl wheel. And our card is complete. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Everything that I used to make this card is available on the CraftStash website, which is craftstash.co.uk, where you'll find heaps and heaps of inspiration and how-tos.